Since I started uploading again, several of my friends considering YouTube or who already have channels have asked if they are allowed to make videos on niche indie games. Of course, this is poking fun at how that's my only content, so naturally my answer is no. Well, I'm sick of taking a beating. I'm sick of being the one who just can't make the content that they want to make. Joke's on them, and joke's on you. I know what'll show them. So today, I have for you another niche indie game. Solar Ash, let's just, whatever. Solar Ash is a phenomenal platforming action-adventure game from the developers of the critically acclaimed Hyper Light Drifter. I've yet to play it, but there's a sequel coming out soon, so I'm hoping to get around to it soon. That's not what we're talking about here, though. Really quick, before we get into the game itself, I just want to talk quickly about the performance. I have a pretty good PC, or so I'd like to think, but there was a point where I was having a lot of performance issues. For about an hour or so in the second area, I was having some of the worst frame drops I have ever seen in a game. I dropped the video settings from ultra to low with absolutely no change. After doing some fiddling with no results, I closed the game and reopened it, and did not really have any issues for most of the rest of my playthrough. I wanted to mention this because many of the reviews discuss stuttering and poor performance, and I usually don't bring this up in my videos because I want to focus more on the experience of the game, but it seems that a lot of people's experience was affected by this. Anyways, my graphics card is a GeForce RTX 2060 Super, and my processor is a Ryzen 9 3900X, if you want to use that as some sort of benchmark. I have no idea how the console performance is, but if I were to guess, I would say it's pretty good, because what isn't on new-gen consoles? As always, this is your final warning. This video will contain spoilers for all of Solar Ash, so if at any point you think this game looks intriguing, I highly urge you to play it. The game starts off with a slow crawl explaining what led up to the start of this. I could just let it play out for you, but I like talking, if that isn't clear already. So basically, you play as a girl named Ray who is a void runner. Your planet lies just outside the Ultra Void, which is an enormous black hole that continues to expand, eating each and every planet it touches. As all void runners before you have, you leap into the void to attempt to activate the Starseed, a huge device apparently capable of reversing the gravitational pull and expansion of the Ultra Void. Upon entering, you are met with a large figure dripping in blood who, after a brief conversation, pushes you away. When you wake up, you're in a large ruin. You leave it and enter into a massive open space where you skate along the blue clouds and islands that sit among them. You meet an AI who is seemingly familiar with your people, but she's lost her memory after being in the void so long. She points you in the direction of masses of black ooze. These challenges are the only way to reach the boss of each region. Once you complete all of these, you'll return to see the Crater Ouroboros, a giant dragon-like monster made of the black ooze and bones. You grapple onto the creature and destroy the weak points, shedding off some of the bone of its body, which was your safe walking point. The ooze slows you down, not allowing you to reach the weak points. Between each weak point, there is a timer. If you do not reach that weak point in time, you take damage and lose a life. Once you do this again, the black part of its body shines red, becoming lethal to the touch. Once you go through with the final phase of this fight, the dragon will fall, giving you the ability to enter the next area. This is where one of my problems with the game began slightly. In this game, if you haven't been able to tell already, one of the highlights is the movement. It's incredible, honestly. It's fast, it's fluid, it looks and it feels great. Unfortunately, the problem is that sometimes you are genuinely moving too fast for your own good. Not a huge issue, but it's certainly something to take note of. You move on and enter the threshold of the Broken Capital, where you meet Lyris, a woman who has seemed to have lost her mind after being stuck in the void for too long. You encounter her a number of times in this area and the ones that follow, learning more about her life, relationships, and situation. You also briefly meet the Forgotten Thresher, the boss of this area. You can see his hulking shadow swimming beneath the clouds, seemingly no end to his snaking body. You travel through multiple buildings of the destroyed city, where you learn the fate of a fellow Void Runner, Irving, who seemingly died before you were able to reach him. By finding all the caches hidden across the city, you are able to acquire and wear his suit. By climbing the several buildings around you, you find the ooze, eliminating each one to draw out the boss. Once you rid each area of the ooze, the Thresher will ascend from the clouds. This one is still not exactly difficult, but it's certainly a step up from the crater Ouroboros. Before latching onto him, the Thresher will drop bombs onto the area below him, requiring you to dodge them in order to grapple up. Once you latch on, he will turn and roll through the air, meaning you'll have a very limited amount of time for each one. Unlike the first, each phase will take you on a completely different path, meaning you'll have to really be paying attention to the location of each weak point while you're trying to find it. Again, once you finish with the third phase, the Forgotten Thresher will fall, opening up the next region. After you beat it, you are teleported back to the strange place with the bloody figure. You learn her name is Echo, and she very quickly sends you back to the Void. From here, you move on to the Ironroot Basin. Once you enter, you'll see a few massive legs stomping across the ground in front of you. This is the Lost Sentinel, the boss of the basin. It was in this area I discovered that these things are actually called anomalies, so I can finally stop saying ooze. You meet up with Lyris again, who does not remember you or apparently anything else. Her people have been dead for a long time, but she continues to retrace the clues over and over, oblivious to the fact that she will come to a devastating realization at the end of them. You explore some more and find more logs from another of the Void Runners. Verse, it seems, was stranded in the basin, having lost communication from the rest of them. In an attempt to contact them, he shot out rescue flares, but due to the abstract gravity of the Void, they never even reached the sky. At this point, Ray has come to the conclusion that Verse is dead too, and she can only assume the same for the rest of them. This means that she is truly alone from this point forward. You work your way through the basin and find a shrine with a large tree inside. Around back is a tunnel leading downwards. There are memorials covering the walls with names written on them. At the bottom, you find Lyris, sitting beside the grave of her loved one, finally remembering that she too is the last one standing. After you clear all of the anomalies, the sentry's eyes are open, and he is not happy. He blasts you with explosives wherever you are. You try and get close, managing to grapple onto his tentacle. You skate along him and kick him right in the brain. You do the same thing from the other side. Finally, you grapple onto his tail and make your way towards the head. If you are successful, you'll stab him through the skull, finally dropping the lost sentry. Again, you are teleported to Echo. She tells you that your people once imprisoned her here, wherever here is. You tell her that maybe by activating the Starseed, you'll be able to free her. Naturally, not being very trusting of you, she gets angry and sends you away, so you head back to the capital and get through the newly opened gate. The next location is the Eternal Garden. You walk through the gate and into a building where you're met with a bird-like man named Auric. He doesn't seem as spacey as Lyris, and he tells you that you need to find his elders. The garden feels very distinct from the other locations you've visited so far. Seeing as Auric is very clearly a different species than that of Lyris, my assumption is that this area looks so different because this is what Auric's planet was like. While Lyris's was a brighter, more lush environment, this one, when swallowed up by the void, formed a darker atmosphere, promoting the growth of mycelium similar to the planet that was assimilated. This was a welcome change. I love the color scheme and overall visuals of the game so far, but it was nice to have a new type of biome to look at. Once you enter, the spindly black creature watching over shifts around on the mass it's standing on. There's a cool mechanic that's introduced here where you can hit these fungal growths and they sort of attach to you. Once this happens, you can approach a growth of the same color and it will grow a vine that you can grind on, allowing you to move through the environment quickly. Some of the anomalies in this garden revolve around this mechanic, needing to get the right vines to the right places in order to clear them. I appreciate this addition because I thought the anomaly challenges needed a little bit more variety. Through the caches in this area, you learn of Piate's experience, first taking notice of the massive bones that cover the garden, hypothesizing that the creatures these belong to were once worshipped as gods. In a dark cavern, you approach some sort of creepy-ass humanoid statue. As it turns out, this is actually one of the elders that Auric spoke of. You recite the words he told you to, and the elder awakens, sending you away because he claims that they are not just words and you don't understand their significance. So I have to admit, there was something I was wrong about. I tend to write these scripts as I play the game, because I just don't have a very good memory. As it turns out, Auric's people and the fungi are actually natives to the Void, which is why their structures are fully intact. Auric describes his species as the, quote, Wardens of the Eternal Cycle. He says that the rest of his people have joined the mycelium network already, leaving him as the last one standing because he just isn't ready to give his life up yet. Once you enter the main cathedral, you'll have to do a neat little puzzle that isn't too hard, but it opens up a massive pit. Once you drop down, it feels like it'll never end, but it does, and you're surrounded by darkness. You'll have to light up the area by hitting these crystals to be able to do pretty much anything. There's some more color puzzles, which shouldn't prove to be too difficult as long as you've graduated first grade or your sophomore year if you're a business major. You'll enter into the final room, which is covered by the fungalized friends of Auric. Down here, you'll clear the last anomaly, allowing you to fight the boss. This one is really cool, actually. You'll need to skate up to the planetoid that it's standing on, then you grab the checkpoint, and you can finally fight the Withered Eye. To start the actual speed fight, you have to dodge his first big hit in order to put him in a position where you can climb onto him. They are pretty fun, but you pretty much get the idea with the bosses at this point, so I don't think I need to take you through this one. From here, you head back to the Ironroot Basin to reach the Mirror Sea, a series of floating rock islands and hazardous waters. This one is another gorgeous stray from the original palette, with bright yellow and greens accompanied by several massive metal ships. After exploring for a bit, you hear a voice projected from one of the ships. You've apparently entered the zone of what was supposed to be a massive military operation, so you are now considered a threat. To get out of this, you swear fealty to the Man's Legion. As you can see, this area is a lot more vertical compared to the others. That's not to say the other regions had no verticality, but here it's much more immediate, with you being able to climb several stories in seconds with the use of its rails and pads you can activate to send you flying. You start leaping between the ships in order to meet the captain on the bridge of his ship. Along the way, you find another cache, with this area being dedicated to a Void Runner named Gozam. It seemed he realized that something has gone wrong early into the mission, stating that he needs to gather the others and get out. You meet Captain Ames on the bridge, and he informs you that his species leader has been lost, so he tasks you with finding him and the 4 away teams that he has sent out to find it. After leaving the ship is where you get your first big tell of just how large the Mirror Sea is. By no means were the other locations small, but even comparatively, this one is much larger. You find one of the crews. Well, their ship and uniforms, that is. They have been melted. You ride up to the next big area and are met with the next boss, a massive humanoid remnant, easily the most menacing so far. Ray comments that it seems familiar, like she saw in a dream. After skating around some more, you find another of the crashed ships. At least these ones didn't get melted. Naturally, the final 2 crews also faced quite a grim fate. Once you clear the final anomalies, you're able to descend the Cloud Pillar and face the Rust Dragger. After defeating him, you return to Echo, who warns you against activating the Starseed. She tells you that you won't be able to save anyone, not even yourself. You wake up next to Sid, the AI that has accompanied you thus far. She too warns against activating it, but you don't care, determined that it will change the fate of your people. She begins the attunement protocol before shutting down. Before heading off to the final area, Ames was able to locate a distress signal below his home Senate building. You head down there to find an open vault and an abundance of dead bodies. You hear a gunshot and a scream, and find Ames standing over his deceased leader. He informs you that his society was corrupt, and his leader had the rescue crews murdered. He now goes off on his own to somehow save his empire. Again, through the Ironroot Basin is where you'll be able to find the last location, the Luminous Peak. This world is covered in lava, also inhabited by the Umbra, which was RX people. Once you enter, you're treated to a brief cutscene of this location's remnant bursting out of the lava, a massive dragon-like creature with several sets of legs and enormous wings. This area looks and feels kind of small for the first bit, but it is so far from it. Here you'll find the caches of Tufty, who seem to be the leader of the Void Runners. Like Gozam, she believes that the Starseed cannot save them. At the time of her death, she lost hope, truly believing that there was nothing that could save even a single one of them. You find another of Arc's elders who basically tells you that survival is for fucking morons, and you can only find eternal purpose in death. Once you ascend to the top of the peak, you should have finished all of the anomalies. Now you can take on the Burning Hunter, shedding parts of its wings on each phase completion. Once you defeat it, the Hunter will crash to the ground, and you'll again return to Echo. She wonders if you ever question where the remnants came from, and you say it doesn't matter. She says you're blinded by your determination, and sends you back to the Void. From here, you teleport back to the crater and ascend the Starseed. Just as the previous Void Runners had theorized, it cannot save your planet. Echo appears before you. You don't listen, naturally. You activate it anyway. Nothing happens. You and Echo are one and the same. She informs you that the Starseed does not reverse time, it merely repeats it, over and over and over again. Now you have a choice. Destroy it, or activate it again. I chose to destroy it. Echo makes a comment that you listened, finally, but why this time, implying that you both have been through this pain many times before. Upon its destruction, Ray becomes a remnant, implying that all the ones that came before were products of the Starseed's use. You wake up as Echo, finally freed from her metaphysical prison. You step outside, and there she is. The cycle is broken, but Ray has become a huge, monstrous version of herself. Just like the other remnants, you defeat her and awaken the Ultra Void next to Sid. You have a newfound purpose. The Ultra Void is no longer the end, but the beginning. Alright, so that is the game, pretty much. What I had was the good ending, and in the bad ending, Echo dies, and Ray still turns into a big monster, so there's no boss fight. I'm pretty sure. Anyways, this is going to be my final thoughts on the game. There is a lot of good, but in my opinion, there's also a fair bit of not so great. There's actually not that much bad. I was exaggerating, but there is enough. So let's start with what I loved. No-brainer, straight up, the art direction. From the color palette to the enemy design, everything just looks so damn good. Every single area is distinct from the others while also keeping similar elements to ensure that they don't feel out of place. Next up is the movement, again, of course. It looks as good as it feels. That's all I can really say. It's fast, it's smooth, and the mechanics introduced throughout the game really add to it. Third, the music. Coupled with the art, the music keeps up the atmosphere really, really well. It's ethereal, it's dreamlike, and it's just really damn good. I also really enjoyed the collectibles. They're not all that complicated. It just comes down to finding the Void Runner caches that I mentioned. There's between like 4 and 6 in each area, and finding all the caches in that area, you get the suit of the past Void Runner who was there. I like that all these look very different from one another, and each also has a passive ability. None are game-breaking, none are that exciting, but they're a nice little optional objective if you're looking for a cosmetic change, which I am a sucker for. Fifth is the level design. This kind of goes with the art direction, so I wasn't sure if I should mention it, but I decided to anyway, obviously. It's just really good. The level design is great. Lastly, I want to say that I did really like the theme. I'm not very intelligent, and I didn't look anything up, so I'm not sure if this is right, so take it with a grain of salt, but I'm pretty sure that the message is to look past finality, even if you feel like it's the end of the world. Start fresh. I like that. I thought it was neat. Now for the few things that I did not like. Number one, the combat. It's not the focus of the game, so I'm not going to pick away at it too hard, but that's also kind of the problem. Against the bosses, it's great. The bosses are more or less the same, which is why I'm briefly mentioning it, but it doesn't bother me too much, because while there is little variety, I think their designs are all very nice, and they have fun fights. Where the combat is frustrating is against normal rank-and-file enemies. There are some points where it feels like combat wasn't even supposed to be in the game, honestly. You have one attack, and some enemy types ask you to slow down and fight them, but this game was just not made for you to slow down. The difficulty. This game is not hard. It's not at all hard. The bosses aren't hard, the speed challenges aren't particularly hard, and I played it on the hardest mode that I could on my first playthrough. I don't need it to be Dark Souls. I suck at Dark Souls, honestly, but I do wish it was a little more challenging. And 3, the performance. I neglected to mention this a bit earlier, but in some areas I did have some more serious frame drops. Most of this was in the middle section of the game, but by the end of it I didn't really feel anything, so I don't know, man, it's just really inconsistent. But yeah, that's about it. It sounds like I'm ragging on the game pretty hard, but I did actually like it a lot. The bad stuff was also amplified by the fact that I was writing the script and recording at the same time, so that probably took away from my experience a bit. With that being said, I do recommend this game. Come for the, well, actually not a lot of people showed up, but stay for the atmosphere. I finished it in about 6 hours, which could be a pro or a con depending on how you see it, but I definitely can see myself revisiting this when I don't have to write a script for it. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, subscribe, like, comment, and I will catch you in the next one.